I think we always stood quite far from the whole heavy metal movement because, honestly, that scene had its own attitude. Most of those musicians carried themselves a certain way. Angus Young may be small in size, but when it comes to holding a grudge, the AC/DC icon hits harder than any power chord. Known around the world for his blistering guitar riffs and trademark schoolboy outfit, Angus has never hesitated to call out musicians he simply couldn't tolerate. Whether it came down to ego, personality clashes, or just pure friction within the rock world, his dislikes were every bit as fiery as his legendary solos. Today on Legends Uncovered, we break down the 6 musicians Angus Young disliked the most. Bon Jovi and glam metal. The 1980s brought a massive shift in rock. Bands like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Poison, and Def Leppard exploded onto the scene with big hair, glam rock fashion, and radio-friendly hooks. Although Angus Young never singled out Bon Jovi directly, his feelings toward glam metal were clear, and they weren't positive. AC/DC built their identity on simple, hard-hitting riffs and raw power. Glam metal, by contrast, relied heavily on image, makeup, glitter, coordinated outfits, dramatic stage lighting, and polished studio production. Angus felt this approach sacrificed authenticity. To him, glam metal was a commercialized version of rock, designed to sell records rather than to punch the audience in the chest with pure energy. While glam bands filled stadiums and dominated MTV, Angus believed they lacked the grit and musical integrity that defined true rock. Their songs leaned on synthesizers, glossy layering, and carefully crafted choruses, far removed from the raw electricity of AC/DC's sound. To Angus, glam metal was rock music packaged as a product rather than lived as an art. Deep Purple Angus Young is respected not just for his playing, but also for his blunt honesty, and one band that received some of his harshest criticism was Deep Purple. Though Deep Purple helped shape hard rock and heavy metal, Angus felt their performances lacked authenticity. He remembered paying to see them early in his career and leaving disappointed. "I saw Deep Purple live once, and I paid money for it. I thought, geez, this is ridiculous." What bothered him wasn't just boredom. It was the feeling that Deep Purple leaned too heavily on technical showiness without providing the gut-level energy he believed rock should have. He even described them as a poor man's Led Zeppelin. To Angus, their music was technically strong, but lacked originality and genuine spirit. He saw them as a band trying too hard to sound impressive rather than simply delivering raw, powerful rock. Angus's criticism reflected his lifelong philosophy. Rock doesn't need layers of complexity, drawn-out experimentation, or polished poses. It needs energy, truth, and a fire that hits the audience immediately. Kiss. In the 1970s and 1980s, AC/DC and Kiss were two of the biggest names in rock, dominating stages across the globe. But while both bands enjoyed massive followings, their musical philosophies could not have been more different. Kiss built their empire on spectacle: flames, makeup, costumes, blood-spitting, exploding stages. Angus Young, however, never bought into that approach. From the beginning, he was suspicious of bands who depended too heavily on theatrics. To him, Kiss represented exactly what rock shouldn't be: a flashy distraction from weaker musicianship. While he understood that millions loved their style, Angus believed the makeup and stunts were a cover-up for shallow songwriting. Where AC/DC delivered pure, no-nonsense rock, thunderous drums, explosive guitar work, and an electrifying atmosphere, Kiss leaned into showmanship. Angus often joked that they relied on theatrics to hide a lack of musical depth. This difference became clear when Kiss invited AC/DC to tour with them. Gene Simmons later confirmed that AC/DC turned down the offer because Kiss's extravagant stage show clashed with AC/DC's stripped-down rock philosophy. For Angus, good rock didn't need costumes, flames, or elaborate sets. Power came from the music itself, played loud, fast, and real. Led Zeppelin few bands in rock history command the same level of respect as Led Zeppelin. They changed the face of hard rock and heavy metal with groundbreaking compositions, thunderous guitars, and performances that felt larger than life. Their musical legacy is towering, but even giants aren't above criticism. Angus Young has always spoken plainly about what he values in music: intensity, honesty, and a deep connection with the crowd. Although he never outright claimed he hated Led Zeppelin, he did openly point out what he considered weaknesses in their live shows. Reflecting on a concert he attended, he recalled, "I've seen that band live, and they were on for 3 hours. For 2 and 1 to 2 hours, they bored the audience. Then at the end—" He didn't even finish the sentence, because the meaning was obvious. To Angus, Zeppelin often drifted into long, self-indulgent stretches of improvisation that broke the flow of their performance. As someone whose entire philosophy revolves around keeping the audience plugged into the energy from the opening chord to the final note, the idea of a band losing the crowd for that long was unacceptable. For Angus, rock should feel alive, immediate, and electrifying, not padded out with extended solos and theatrical detours. Even the most skilled musicians, in his view, could fall flat if they lost touch with the people watching them. This didn't erase Zeppelin's legacy. Their albums remain untouchable classics, and their influence is immeasurable. But in Angus's eyes, their marathon concerts sometimes drifted into territory that felt like indulgence rather than excitement. The Rolling Stones. By the late 1970s, the Rolling Stones were already legends, but Angus Young felt their music had drifted away from the raw power that once defined them. In a 1977 interview, he said, "The Rolling Stones get up and play soul music these days. This is supposed to be rock and roll." He believed the Stones had moved too far into soulful, polished territory, leaving behind the rough blues rock that made them great. Angus argued that the subtleties of soul music came naturally to the genre's original black artists, and the Stones couldn't capture that same authenticity. To him, every band should stick to what they do best, and in his opinion, the Stones were at their strongest when they embraced grit, not smoothness. AC/DC's philosophy was the opposite of experimentation. They doubled down on simplicity, directness, and relentless energy, while the Stones, at least in that era, seemed to drift.